Hey guys, Chris here. Today we have a story about two hikers who go into the wilderness and things changed on them and they weren't prepared and their story became tragic. That's next. Okay, so today I'm in the Sierra Nevada mountains and I'm going in, it's pretty much midday because where I'm going it'd be much too dangerous to go at night. I have these lava formations and there's these cave-like structures that were created with erosion and along this cliff face with lava. So we're gonna go in there to do the story today. Okay, so I am in my first lava tube type cave. Kind of interesting. Yeah, like I said, much too dangerous to do this kind of thing at night. Other than that, it's very navigable. I got a nice route back out up to the car, which is up in the ridge this way. And for today, I have a Belching Beaver Brewing Company peanut butter milk stout that I'm going to be drinking. I actually dropped this into the creek down below, cooled that off, so that gave me a nice cold beer. So we are gonna drink that. There we go. All right, cheers. And this is ultimately, like I said, this is a tragic story. This mother and daughter made just a few small mistakes, nothing really major, nothing drastic. We could all do the same kind of mistakes. It's just what happens is if you're just not quite prepared, the conditions change and you don't have recourse. And it's like falling out of a boat without a life jacket. It's just a simple decision. Hey, wear the life jacket, wear the life jacket. And some people invariably go, I don't need a life jacket. We're fine. And something happens that you didn't expect and things can change dramatically. And this is what happened with Carole Wetherton and Kimberly Beverly. They were a mother and daughter. Carole was from Panacea, Florida. Kimberly, I'm going to call her Kim, was from Tucker, Georgia. She was 39. Carole was 58. And they wanted to do an outdoor vacation. So they decided to go to Park City, Utah, flew into Salt Lake, went to Park City, rented a condo, and they got a Jeep Grand Cherokee to drive for the week. This was on first week of September in 2003. They took this Grand Cherokee on September 8th, straight east, about 50 miles, and they went to the High Uinta Mountains. And if you know anything about the High Uinta Mountains, it's very interesting. They're a mountain range that literally runs east-west, where most of the mountains in the Rockies and in that area run essentially north-south. And they're marching north-south from Canada all the way to Mexico. And this is a separate range that goes like east-west. It's part of the same chain, but it's its own mountain range. And it's called the High Uintas. And the reason is it's the highest mountains in Utah, over 13,000-foot peaks. Just dramatic country, beautiful high country. The mountain range runs about 60 miles long. And these mountains are actually higher than the mountains in Montana. And so this is just a great uplift in northeast Utah there. And that's where they were heading. They took Highway 50, which goes up and over the west side of the High Uintas. And then east of there, it's mostly wilderness, the High Uinta wilderness. It's quite a large wilderness area. It's amazing country, just amazing country. And they went on this Highway 50, which is snowbound most of the year. The snow melts usually late June, early July, and then it'll quickly close up again sometime late September, maybe October, whenever the first snow falls. And then it's under snow again. And that road is inaccessible. But what this road does is it allows people to go to about 10,000 feet, and then they can start hiking from up there. It's quite wonderful. And they drove to a trailhead called the Crystal Lake Trailhead, and it's called Crystal Lake Trailhead because there's literally a lake right there at the trailhead called Crystal Lake. And there was a basin that they were going to hike into. And there's a couple of discrepancies on exactly which direction they went from what I've learned. The deputies and the search and rescue concluded they went to Long Lake, which is about 2.5 miles maybe from the trailhead. Really rugged country. There was other reports that they went Clyde Lake Loop, which goes around Wall Lake as well, and they were supposed to come back to Crystal Lake. So either way, they were going to go this way or this way, and in between was a mountain called Mount Watson. Big pyramid, dome-shaped, prominent landmark that you could clearly see from all over that area. At the trailhead, they encountered a ranger, and this is probably the last person to see them alive, unfortunately. And he mentioned, and he also noticed, that they didn't seem to have the right gear. Just in case the weather changes, in case it gets cold or wet, they needed to have a rain jacket or some warmer clothing to put on. And from however he gathered that information, I don't know, but he warned them and said, hey, just make sure that if you're out too long, you have the right gear and you plan for things changing. It was a nice day. It was 50 degrees, clear sky, and from what we could tell, they didn't think they were going to be out too long because they actually left some things in the vehicle that we're going to find out later. That afternoon, according to the weather reports at that time, September 8th, 2003, the weather progressively got worse. The clouds came in, wind picked up, started to rain, then it started to sleet, and the sleet later on that evening turned to snow. Temperatures dropped below freezing, and it snowed for the next 48 hours, 2 days. That would mean it snowed till about September 10th. They weren't confirmed missing until 5 days later when they didn't show up on their return flight back to Georgia at Georgia International Airfield. When the family was to pick them up, they did not get off the airplane. Immediately, the family was very concerned. They called the authorities in northern Utah, I'm assuming Park City, Summit County possibly, and Summit County, northern Utah deputies, sheriff, put out an alert for this Jeep Grand Cherokee to find out where they went, where they could be, and then they could look from that point to see if they could locate them. Another 24 hours, a Forest Service ranger found their vehicle parked at the Crystal Lake trailhead. And that was actually late in the day the next day after they were reported missing. So they started a search right away, but I believe it started the next morning. And that search included over 100 search and rescue volunteers, people on ATVs, rangers, Forest Service rangers on horseback, helicopters, and they searched and they found nothing. And the problem, one of the problems was some of these stories, they know an exact point of separation where somebody disappears. They were right here, and somebody went over here for a couple minutes, and they came back, and that person's gone. They have an exact location where to start, really kind of a radius search. Their radius search was from a trailhead, meaning that they went out one way or another way and got lost somewhere in a broader region, which is a lot harder to find somebody. So it's hard to do this clean search every square inch of an area because it's a vast area. This was also September, and it had just snowed, so the trails were obscured. It snowed for 2 days. I believe it had cleared up at this point. They searched for 10 days. They found nothing. They didn't find a trace of them. The family came out, the Wetherton family came out as well to help, to assist with the search and rescue, give any information that they could, and then take part in the search and do what they could with that as well. Obviously, they're very, very concerned. So this search and rescue operation for Carole and Kimberly went on for about 10 days. They didn't find anything. And by September 22nd, they closed the search and rescue, at least until they could find any more clues or some kind of a trace of them. And they had other pressing needs that came up. The family was continuing to search and doing whatever they can to see if they could locate this mother and daughter, their family. And, the weather's going to change pretty quickly. It's later September now, and that snow can come in really quickly and just permanently be there. And that's eventually what happened. It snowed about 20 feet that winter in the High Uintas. Quite a bit of snow. The following summer, June, there was a search and rescue operation down the middle fork of the Weber River behind this Mount Watson, upper reaches of the river. And someone within that search and rescue training operation noticed some reflective material about 300 feet off the trail along the river. And they went to check it out. It was one of these metallic emergency blankets. And then near there, they found this large boulder with a crack in it. And they could see, they found a backpack, and then there they also found the remains of what turned out to be Carole Wetherton and Kimberly Beverly through DNA testing. And so that looks like where they had made their last stand to survive. It turns out what happened was, during this course of this storm, they got severely soaked, did not have the right gear to stay dry, and winter gear to stay warm, and fresh clothing to switch out into to continue to stay dry. And so they spent the night, it looks like the night, at this makeshift shelter. It had pine boughs that they pulled together to make a makeshift shelter, and it looks like they tried to survive there. It looks like they had laid out some clothes, to see if they could dry them out, but there was no sign of a fire.
So because they were completely soaked because of the rain, and they did not have the rain jackets and the dropping temperatures and the snow, their ability to stay warm and alive ended because they got complete exposure and hypothermia. And all hypothermia is your body loses more heat than its ability to generate heat. And you need to have a fire, a shelter, warm clothes to change into, and then stay out of the cold, obviously. And that did not happen. And they most likely died that first night.
They also concluded, based on where they found them along the Weber River, middle fork of the Weber River, which was behind this Mount Watson, like I mentioned, that they got severely disoriented at some point. And what happened, they're theorizing, is that the clouds came in and they drastically changed the landscape. So you're hiking in and you got these very dominant landmarks around you, and then when the clouds come in and the fog comes in, they're gone. They're totally obscured or partially obscured, and they believe if they had gone the Long Lake route, that what probably happened was they were looking not at Mount Watson to their left, coming back from Long Lake, and then going to the right back to Crystal Lake Trailhead. They believe most likely they were looking at Long Ridge, which the end of Long Ridge at the upper end of the middle fork of the Weber River has a kind of a dome-shaped tower, let's call it, similar to Mount Watson. So they had possibly got disoriented because of the snow on the ground, totally obscuring where the real trail was, and they maybe saw this Long Ridge, seeing Long Ridge to their left and then going to the right. But it was the difference between over here and going that way and going over here and going that way, and they were dangerously off course, and they went down the upper middle fork of the Weber River. They also found a camera in this backpack. They found a first aid kit, some lip balm, this camera, where they found the remains of these two. And the camera revealed, kind of documented what happened throughout the course of this day. They could see them on their hike, a few pictures of themselves. They could see in the sky progressively getting worse, meaning the clouds came in, then it got foggy, and then there was a photograph showing rain on a lake. And at that point, they should have for sure headed back, or even earlier when they saw signs of a storm coming in, and not being prepared with rain gear and warmer clothes, matches, etc. And they also saw the last pictures of these two that they took, and they could tell they put on their remaining clothes, zipped it up, hats on, Carole like that, and she's doing her best to stay warm. And so the pictures really told a story about what happened throughout the course of that day. They could see early in the day they were warmer, more relaxed, and then later the pictures are more rigid and they're definitely colder. So they made a series of mistakes, and they were really essentially small mistakes that most of the time, you're not going to pay consequences for. But because of the conditions and how things change so quickly, they paid the price. And I think most people could make these very same mistakes and you get away with it. Number one, they didn't tell anyone where they were going to be that specific day. People knew they were in Park City in northern Utah for that week, but they didn't know of their plans for that day. That was really a big mistake, because 5 days later, before the search started, 6 days later actually, by the time they found the vehicle. So really, you always got to tell people where you are and when to expect to return, and it's just really important. Number two, they didn't have the correct gear. They just needed just a little bit more gear. A rain jacket, a warm, like a down puffy, obviously a Bic lighter, some matches, hat and gloves. You know, you just stick that stuff in your pack, even when it's nice out and you don't think you're going to need it, especially when you're way up high in the mountains where things can really change quickly. Extra water, a little bit of food, something to snack on, just a few trail bars. Sometimes I just leave trail bars in the pack. They're just in there. Cliff bars, things like that. And they stay fresh for a long time. And the third thing they did was they miscalculated on their return trip. There was a key junction either near Long Lake or somewhere behind Mount Watson on the Clyde Lake Loop. Again, there's speculation on which direction they went. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. They got off course on their hike and went completely the wrong direction. So had they had a compass, even with fog and clouds, they would have saw that our car is, let's just say, is to the west, and we can clearly see, it feels like we should go that way, but we can clearly see, according to the compass, we got to go this way. So they could have orienteered the map around and got that kind of figured out and go, it looks like, yeah, that's the direction for the car, because here's where, it looks like this is where we are, and, you know, they could have figured it out. And nowadays with GPS, it's electronic. It's doing a lot of this for you. So it's really, really important to use those tools and always look behind you when you hike, because the return trip, the landscape looks differently, particularly when you got landmarks around you. You get on the other side of a mountain or a landmark, it looks different, and when you come back, you kind of go, that doesn't look quite right. And I always stop and I look behind me and go, that's about where the car is, and I can see, and then I look for things in the horizon. Obviously, the horizon changed for them. It made it really hard to navigate based on the landforms around them. So, yeah, just a really hard story for this mother and daughter and this family. And so it's not an easy story to talk about, but I think they would, want to make sure that people would learn from possibly their mistake. And, just always take those little extra precautions you don't really think you need. And it's not like things have to be a worst case scenario for things to go wrong. It's just nature. It's going to rain, it's going to snow, it's going to get cold. It's not even worst case. It's not like it was a blizzard or a hurricane or something. It's just, you just got to be ready for things. That's all. Just a few things can make a big difference. So, well, I'm going to be doing an overnighter, speaking of backpacking and getting out, and in the next week or two. Some of you have been asking about that. It's that time of year. And this has been really interesting in this cave here. So looking forward to some more trips, things. The weather here is, it's been really cloudy and kind of raining here too. It's been an interesting day. So, all right. Well, thank you for watching. I appreciate you guys, and appreciate you watching my channel and all my stories. And we're going to keep this thing going here. So, all right. We'll see you in the next one. Keep hiking.